Hello, my name is Elizabeth Caselny and I am an Indiana State University LPN to BSN nursing student. Today we're going to be talking about a specific population at risk, which is uninsured American adults who have chronic conditions. Number one is to identify the population of uninsured Americans that are currently at risk. Next, we'll examine the purpose of the Affordable Care Act, as well as highlighting some of its values, and then we'll identify challenges that patients with no insurance face in obtaining health care, evaluate the reasons why patients do not apply for the ACA or any insurance, as well as explore options to help patients afford medications and treatments, and finally identify additional resources for them. And pause this presentation and go down to the link at the bottom and take the pretest to test your knowledge of what you currently know. And then afterwards, we'll take a post-test to see how much we've learned through the presentation. So to start, first we must look at an overview. In 2013, it was found that there was 42 million uninsured Americans, with a large population, or a large majority of the population being within the 19 to 34 age range. In 2019, even after the introduction of the Affordable Care Act, there was about 36 to 45 million Americans that still did not have insurance. However, the percentage did decrease from earlier years from 18 to 9%. Unfortunately, almost half of all insured U.S. adults have at least one chronic health condition, with several reporting more than one. For these patients, they only typically have three options available to them. They can go to community medical centers where there's free services or small fees for their services. They can go to the emergency department, or unfortunately the last option is they can ignore the problem until it becomes more of an issue. Unfortunately, about 80% of U.S. adults are unable to access their primary care doctor and thus preventative care due to a lack of insurance, and instead turn to the emergency department. This results in an overuse of the emergency department, which costs the U.S. economy about $38 billion annually. So what is the Affordable Care Act? This was first introduced in 2010, and it promises quality, affordable health care for all. It addresses different coverage issues such as having no annual limits, coverage of preventative services, dependents can be covered until 26 on their parents' plans, as well as a reform to the appeals process. It also ensures that there's immediate insurance coverage for new candidates, even with a pre-existing condition, and it prohibits insurances from excluding patients with pre-existing conditions. Unfortunately, even with this new development of the Affordable Care Act, some patients still do not have insurance. So what are some difficulties that they can face with no insurance and having chronic conditions? Uninsured chronically ill patients use the emergency department more due to the requirements of EMTALA, which basically means that they have to receive treatment before the emergency department can release them. The emergency department use for these patients unfortunately results in a poor health outcome because there's a lack of care continuity and follow-up. The main goal of the emergency department is to stabilize and transfer. These patients also face a lack of preventative and proactive care. They also report a higher smoking rate between the non-insured population rather than the insured population, which unfortunately can lead to even more chronic conditions. More than 40% of uninsured U.S. adults who use community medical centers report their health as poor, they have a functional disability, or they live with psychological distress. These chronic conditions require multiple prescription medications to control, And the lack of insurance means that they are unable to get their medication, which leads to pain, worsened conditions, and more complications. This can then lead to an increased need for hospitalization and more expensive treatment. So why isn't the Affordable Care Act used more? Well, unfortunately, there is the option for some states to expand their Medicaid insurance as well as the Affordable Care Act, and some states that chose not to. There was a study that evaluated the uninsured subjects' knowledge at free clinics and showed that the majority scored very low on the knowledge test regarding what is involved with the Affordable Care Act. And about 40% of uninsured Americans report no desire to purchase health care coverage or apply for the ACA, which a large portion of it is due to a decreased knowledge and eligibility in those states that choose not to expand their coverage. Some other reasons for not applying is a lack of knowledge, difficulty finding information about the ACA, confusing instructions on how to apply for it, the cost as well as becoming eligible for it, and technology problems, especially for older adults. So what are some options? Well, the first option would be a patient navigator. These are healthcare coordinators that help uninsured patients find knowledge and resources for healthcare, and it helps to increase their access to federal health courses like free clinics. And additionally, employing medical homes with navigators and primary care physicians for chronically ill has helped to reduce hospital admissions by 38% through controlling illness and conditions proactively, showing that preventative care is extremely important. There are also free clinics. These are reduced fee or free health care, and more than 60% of these centers receive no federal funding and only rely on volunteers. The majority of the patients that frequent these free clinics are between 19 to 64 years old with low income and several chronic health conditions. When the ACA was first passed, it created a Community Health Center Fund, which is funding for community health centers. This has increased the access to medical, mental, prescription, and dental health, as well as initiating referrals processes. Another option would be to recommend generic medications versus brand names. Many times, a generic medication is the same formula as the brand name, it's just the name that they're paying for. So what are some resources that you can use outside of this presentation? The first is going to be www.freeclinics.com. This is a list of all the free clinics that are located in each state, broken up by the state name itself. You can also go to www.healthcare.gov, and that will give information based on the Affordable Care Act as well as your own eligibility for it. www.usa.gov gives even more information based on more free clinics as well as insurance options. And www.livestrong.org gives options for both free clinics as well as preventative care that can be obtained freely. So now I'd like you all to pause the video and go down to the bottom to take the post test to see how much knowledge you've learned through this presentation. These are the resources. If you have any questions, please let me know. And thank you for listening today.